Economy, and I'm here today at the 2016 Canadian Science Policy Conference with Naser Faruqui, who's the Director of Technology and Innovation at IDRC. So Naser, thank you so much for joining us. It's a pleasure to have you.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Excellent. So to start us off, I wonder if you can tell us a little bit about your thoughts on the role of collaboration in international development from a science and technology perspective.
Well, I think that collaboration is absolutely critical. We have global problems that cross borders, inequality, Ebola, climate change, and so forth, and no one country or one institution can solve them all. We're also finding that collaboration accelerates science, and it leads to better quality science. It's measurable. You get better results when you have more collaboration from diverse partners. So IDRC more and more is trying to strike these partnerships to improve the quality of the research and the solutions that we're presenting.
Great. So what do you find are some of the hardest challenges in fostering those partnerships and that collaboration, and what are you doing to overcome them?
I think that finding unconventional partners to work with on unconventional partnerships is very important, and sort of going beyond the usual suspects. So to give you an example, the Ministry of Extreme Poverty in Colombia, which is a government department, is collaborating with the Science Granting Council in Colombia on water and sanitation in rural areas, which is a critical issue there, as it is in many other countries. It's very unusual to have a government department like that collaborate with their domestic science agency to take an evidence-based approach to their interventions on water and sanitation or any other issue. And herein lies the practical difficulty, is that government's budget lines don't necessarily align, their strategic plan doesn't align, who they report to and how they report. And so you have all of these kind of very practical operational considerations in fostering those kinds of partnerships. And we're finding it in IDRC's work with our Canadian granting councils, which we've been working out over time, but also with diverse sets of partners in developing countries. But it's important to do those partnerships with unconventional partners because you get better results.
So what do you see as some of the drivers and the outcomes in terms of better results? What are some of the improved outcomes that you're seeing with those partnerships?
Well, I mean, to sort of give a practical example, if an agency on extreme poverty or the department responsible for water and sanitation is just implementing projects or programs without, bringing evidence in. For instance, where do you drill a well? Well, if you work with your geology department, if you do research on kind of where are the aquifers, where's the water flowing, what's the connection between the rivers and the subsurface systems. I'm originally a water engineer, so I'm getting into an example that I know well. We found in the past that they're completely ineffective when the agency that's doing this is doing it in the absence of the latest scientific research. If you look at issues like the balance between privacy on one hand and security on the other, and you have agencies that are responsible for regulating that for a government, but you're doing it in the absence of what does the international evidence say about this? Because it's not just a Canadian issue, it's not just an American issue, it's not just a Kenyan issue. It affects the whole world, right? So it's absolutely critical, and we're finding when that evidence is informed by the policy, you get better results. And in fact, you have things returned to countries in ways that aren't so obvious. So we have a program called the International Community University Research Alliances that looks at approaches for supporting people with mental health problems in Canada, in Brazil, in Colombia, and in a number of other countries. Some of the research that was done in Brazil resulted in policy changes in Canada related to how we work with mental health people, how people who have mental health problems. Things as simple actually as providing sort of free bus passes to people so that they're better able to afford going to clinics and are more consistent about their presence at appointments and so forth. We don't realize, I think, for those of us who are a bit better off, how much this costs, how much parking costs and so forth. Sometimes it's very simple issues that we have to be reminded of. Yeah.
Absolutely. So I think the reasoning is very strong that if you have a diversity of partners then that will lead to often better ideas and better outcomes. Do you think that that's analogous to the role of diversity in STEM organizations on a personal micro scale in terms of the people in these organizations?
Well, yes, and I think that we all naturally gravitate to work with people who think like us. And we do it, it's one of those cognitive biases, right? That we have a bias that the way we think, the way we analyze, the way that we interrelate with people is the best way to do it. And we subconsciously will hire people who think like us. We subconsciously want to work with people who think like us because it's less adversarial, right? That things in a sense go smoother. But that doesn't mean that they go better, that we get better results. And so, we're taught in HR courses to hire people that are different from you. When I did my business degree, we had to put together a team which had a whole brain, which meant that, the various pieces of the team thought in different ways, but coming together, they had sort of a complete approach to solving problems. And I think that the same goes for a research program, that one, you need, interdisciplinary research. You need, sociologists working with technologists, working with engineers, working with natural and applied sciences. But two, you also need diversity in terms of gender. And you need women to be empowered to take part of research teams. And we're finding, the latest research is that organizations that have women as leaders do better in the bottom line. We know that organizations that have more diversity in general do better on the bottom line, and then the same thing comes to research. Yet, women face significant obstacles in participating in research, especially international research collaborations. So that's a particular focus of IDRC for the coming years, is trying to really move the needle on the ability of women to enter and excel in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics fields, and not leave the profession but stick with it, and to develop particular policies for helping them do that.
So what sort of policies?
Well, one sort of obvious one is not penalizing them for biologic reasons, not penalizing them for taking maternity leaves, providing flexible approaches to their careers and allowing them to interrupt them for a certain period and coming back. I think those kinds of programs have to apply to both women and men, and when we do it that way, then we're more likely to build broad-based support for it. But this is crucial because, these young graduates at the doctoral level, at the postdoc level, they often have to work so hard and are afraid to say no to assignments, say no to additional research and so forth, because they're looking for that tenure track position. And so for a woman to say, well, I'm going to take time off now to have a family, is kind of a career killer, right? We have to change that, because otherwise we're losing 50% of our brain power, and in addition losing a diverse viewpoint, which will enrich whatever research it is that we're conducting.
Absolutely. So what do you think are some things that individual researchers and science and technology professionals might be able to do in their lives to help move past their own implicit biases and maybe start creating that change from the ground up?
Well, I think that education is actually part of it. It's very important for any researcher to have a very strong, grounded sense of their own discipline. My first degree is in engineering, and it's a 4-year program, and there's not a lot of room for a lot of other courses, beyond the technical ones. And you don't want to not take calculus and take sociology. It's important to know calculus to be an engineer, right? However, there is room for enabling engineers to take elective courses and maybe perhaps expand their degrees, or do an internship in a different area. Think about how the field of engineering is going to solve problems related to poverty, and not just create the next iPod and so forth, which is extremely important, right? Innovation and commercialization is crucial for us to grow our economies. But we need to focus on, what are we doing it for? So to come back to this point about education, I think there is room to enrich education, both from the technical side, but also social sciences education, to have them more exposed to technical issues and so forth, and better understand them, so that when they engage with them on issues like empowerment of women, or how do you get kids to better use technology, digital innovations that will improve education, because there are social sciences approaches. You need to understand the technology in order to offer social sciences analyses around that technology. So broader based education, I think, is one. Specific opportunities like internships or special projects where you're exposed to other disciplines, I think, is another. And of course, probably doing more of what we're already doing, which is interdisciplinary and multidisciplinary research, is a third.
Absolutely. So my final question before we wrap up, for those who are viewing at home, where can we go online to learn more about IDRC's work?
Well, our public website, idrc.ca, is the place to go. Yeah.
Great. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.
It's been a pleasure having you.